I'm on a small yard, relaxing, trying to get some sunshine. It's a beautiful day. Might have been about a half a dozen people in the yard, and I hear this grunting, and I look, and I see this dude, and his face is like this, and I'm looking, I'm like, man, what's going on? What this dude's doing, man, this poor dude, and he's got his hands like this, and he's going up and down, and he's leaning against the brick wall of the building, in the corner of the building. You know, you got your corners, and he's in the corner of the building, and in the corner of the building, he got his buttocks in between his cheeks, and he's just moving up and down the bricks, and he's and he's screaming. He's got his hands clenched, and I'm like, man, what's this dude doing? I never saw nothing like this. I'm kind of like, my mind, I chuckle like this is the craziest thing. This is the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. And this dude's screaming, and he's in between the building. I'm like, man, this dude's on some different stuff. And I know the gun tower could see him too, because the gun tower got a full view of the area on the yard where all the inmates were allowed to go. And there's also the roamer, the guard who roams the yard. And I know, and the other inmates, they see him, they shooting hoops. You know, the few people that was on the lawn, you hear the ball bouncing, boom, 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 boom. And I'm looking, I'm like, why I'm the only one that's fixated on what this man is doing on this corner over here? And he's just going up and down. He's just, he's taking breaks, and he's sitting there breathing, and he's against the back wall. And I'm like, man, what's going on? I couldn't figure it out because I honestly didn't know. Because in prison, they got some sick people that if this dude was involved in some kind of weird fetish or pleasuring himself in some kind of weird way that I did not understand. And so later on, we go in the dorm, and he's in the dorm. Like I said, there's not a lot of people. This is during a very quiet part of the day where most people are out at work on work calls. And so the dude is laying down on his bunk, and there's people in the dorm. And you got to think, like I said, I'm new to this dorm. And so this dude, he got his hands in his pants, and he's all the way in the corner in the back, and I'm way toward the front. And I look in the back, you can hear him grunting still, and he's got his legs sprawled out. He just got his boxers on, and he's laying on his bed, and his hands are going inside his crotch, and he's yeah. And he's doing that, and I'm like, man, this dude's hurting. And I'm watching him, and I'm like, I honestly, this moment from what I saw outside to what I saw in the dorm, I didn't know if this was like some dude doing some kind of sexual deviant thing, right? I really didn't know at the time. Come to find out, I found out I got put on my game by somebody. They told me the dude had a severe case of jock itch and athlete's foot. That's right. This man was suffering from jock itch and athlete's foot. So later on, days later or whatever, next day I saw him, the dude would be at the same brick wall that he was scratching his butt in. He would have his feet, and he would be grinding his feet against the brick wall, grinding his feet. You could hear him grinding. It was almost, and if it was quiet enough, you could hear his feet just scratching against the brick wall. And he would just be in that corner of that brick wall, scratching his feet. He was suffering, man. His feet were bad. They looked the part too. When you saw him when his shoes were off, his feet was bad. And he used to have, he had bleach with him. The officers had given him bleach. So he had bleach because he would have to actually clean the shower when he was finished, and he kept his area clean with bleach, right? So he can clean after himself, or whenever he used the bathroom, he would clean it up. He would have the bleach. They kept giving this dude bleach. So I didn't know that there was such a thing as severe cases of jock itch and the athlete's foot, but this man was the worst I ever seen in my life. Before I went to prison, I didn't even know exactly what athlete's foot was and jock itch. Like I said, I went to prison when I was 18, 19 years old. I had never experienced it. I never played organized sports, so I never had it. And the first time I got athlete's foot or jock itch was when I was in prison. And I even get, of course, you got your shower slides on and you wear them doing everything, but that doesn't stop that fungus from spreading around. Sometimes you still get it. Actually, when I got out of prison and I was home and I was driving down the street one day, I remember telling my wife, we were just dating at the time. This was about, 18 years ago when I met my wife, and I'm like, my hand itches all the time. I don't know why. It's the weirdest thing. I can't pinpoint why it's doing that. She spoke to somebody she knew who was in the medical field. So, you know, the guy I'm dating, you know, like I said, we wasn't married at the time. His hand's always itch. She said, does he have athlete's foot? And she said, oh. And see, I didn't know, but just by touching and scratching your hand, you can get athlete's foot from your foot to your hand. And so this dude had a severe case of it. It was the craziest thing I ever seen in my life. It was very strange. And it was like this guy had leprosy. Nobody went around him. And, you know, it was maybe a couple of weeks before he was moved. I think they moved him to a medical dorm, or they moved him to the hospital. He had to get something done. It was severe. He was suffering. And this dude, he wasn't thinking about any kind of deviant pleasure, because this guy was suffering. He was in pain. He couldn't sleep. He was exhausted all the time. That's how bad this guy was itching. His whole body was itching. And he used to keep powder poured all over himself. I mean, after he would get out, he would take, like, they allowed him, he didn't have no work or no nothing. They allowed this dude to take showers nonstop all day. So he was constantly running cold water all over his body. And he would get out and he would pour the powder all over his body. He would pour the powder all over his, you know, his private area and his feet. And he would just be laying suffering. You know, these are the type of things that people go through when you go to jail and you have a medical issue and you don't have somebody there to give you the proper care that you need. And this dude suffered for weeks underneath this fungus that had attacked his body for whatever reason. He went through it. You know, all the other cases I seen in jail, yeah, people had jock itch, people had athlete's foot, but it'd be the more common things that you see people go through. They would get their medicine, they powder, you know, and put it on their feet, their hands, and, you know, their private areas. And, you know, you just, honestly, you should be praying that it goes away and get rid of it. But this was the craziest instance I've ever seen. So that's the story about the weirdest thing I ever did see in prison. Was the man who didn't have leprosy, but he had jock itch and athlete's foot. Give me a like, thumbs up, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.